There was a time during World War II when Nazi Germany dreamed of something audacious, an attack on American soil. Adolf Hitler and his military leaders wanted to send bombers across the Atlantic to strike at the heart of the United States. Specifically, they had their sights set on New York City. This wasn't some fleeting idea tossed around casually. It was an official project, known as the Amerika Bomber, and it almost became a terrifying reality. The origins of the Amerika Bomber project. The concept of long-range bombers capable of hitting the US was sparked early in the war, around 1938. Hitler, fascinated by the idea of seeing New York City in flames, had tasked his engineers and military officials with finding a way to make it happen. By 1942, the Luftwaffe's chief, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, had plans on his desk detailing how such a mission might unfold. Germany, which already possessed a powerful air force, still faced one critical limitation: range. The United States was simply too far away for conventional German bombers to reach. The round-trip distance from Germany to New York was about 11,600 kilometers, and no existing German aircraft could make such a journey without refueling. So, how do you overcome such an obstacle? The answer came in the form of the Messerschmitt Me 264, Junkers Ju 390 and the Heinkel He 277, aircraft designed specifically to make this intercontinental trip. But more on those planes later. First, let's dive into why Hitler thought this idea was worth pursuing. Hitler's obsession with striking the US. Hitler's obsession with bombing the US wasn't just about brute force, it was about symbolism. Imagine the impact of the Third Reich striking New York City. Beyond the physical damage, the psychological blow would have been enormous. Hitler believed it would weaken American morale and force the US to shift its resources to home defense, which in turn would ease pressure on Germany and Europe. By 1941, Hitler saw an opportunity to make this a reality. He believed that by deploying long-range bombers from the Azores, a chain of Portuguese islands in the Atlantic, the Luftwaffe could potentially strike American cities. He wasn't entirely wrong either. In the early years of the war, Portuguese Prime Minister Salazar had allowed German U-boats and naval ships to refuel in the Azores. But by 1943, those bases had been leased to the British, making it impossible for the Germans to use them. This was just one of many setbacks that would doom the Amerika Bomber project. The aircraft, Messerschmitt, Junkers, and Heinkel. Let's talk about the planes themselves. The Messerschmitt. Me 264 was the first aircraft considered for the Amerika Bomber project. Designed in 1942, this plane was built with long-range capabilities in mind. Its maximum range of 11,025 kilometers was impressive, but it wasn't quite enough to make the round trip to New York. 3 prototypes were built, but the aircraft never made it to full production. Then there was the Junkers Ju 390, which was a more advanced version of the Ju 290. 2 prototypes were constructed, and there were even claims that one of them flew close to 20 kilometers from the US coastline in 1944. However, these claims have since been discredited. Like the Me 264, the Ju 390 wasn't reliable enough to fulfill the requirements of the Amerika Bomber mission. Lastly, we have the Heinkel He 277, another long-range bomber that underwent various design changes throughout the war. By 1943, Heinkel proposed a 6-engine variant of the He 277, capable of flying the necessary distances. But again, problems with Germany's engine production and the high cost of these planes meant that they never saw significant use. Ultimately, all of these aircraft shared the same fate. They were either too expensive, too ambitious, or technically infeasible for Nazi Germany to mass produce and deploy effectively. The Huckepack project. At one point, German engineers even explored more unorthodox methods to achieve their goal. Enter the Huckepack project or piggyback project. The idea was to have a Heinkel He 177 bomber carry a Dornier Do 217, fitted with an additional Lorin ramjet as far as possible over the Atlantic. Once they reached a certain point, the Do 217 would detach and continue the mission as a one-way trip. The plan was for the crew to ditch the plane off the US coast and be picked up by a waiting German U-boat. However, Just like many other ideas of the time, this plan never came to fruition. By the time it had advanced far enough to be tested, Germany had lost control of the airbase at Bordeaux, which was essential to the project. Eventually, the Huckepack project was scrapped due to the increasing distance from operational bases and the inability of the German Navy to provide the necessary support. Beyond bombers. If conventional aircraft couldn't do the job, what about something more futuristic? Eugen Senger, a visionary German aerospace engineer, proposed the Silbervogel or Silverbird, a rocket-powered suborbital bomber capable of reaching North America. The concept was to launch the plane into space, where it would use the Earth's curvature to skip across the atmosphere before re-entering and dropping its payload on US targets. Although Sanger's design was never built, the theoretical groundwork laid by the Silbervogel would later inspire post-war aerospace engineers. Why the Amerika Bomber failed. While the idea was bold and Hitler was fixated on it, the project was plagued by insurmountable challenges. For one, the German aircraft industry was already stretched thin, and Germany lacked the central authority needed to effectively develop and produce advanced weaponry. The Allies' relentless bombing campaigns didn't help either. By 1943, Germany's industrial capacity was severely weakened, particularly when it came to producing fuel. Even if an Amerika bomber had been built, there simply wasn't enough fuel to power it. Another major factor was the lack of a suitable engine. None of the engines available at the time could reliably generate the power needed to carry out such long-distance missions. And even if a bomber had reached New York City, what damage could it have realistically caused? With relatively small bomb loads, the destruction likely wouldn't have been significant enough to turn the tide of the war. Germany's nuclear program was years behind the Allies, and they didn't possess the technology to drop atomic bombs from aircraft. In the end, the Amerika Bomber remains one of those fascinating what-if stories of World War II, an ambitious, almost sci-fi plan that, had it been successful, could have changed the course of history. But as with many of Nazi Germany's late war projects, it ultimately proved too little, too late. If you found this story captivating, don't forget to like, subscribe to Legends of Aviation, and comment below. What do you think? Could the Amerika Bomber have really made a difference? Let me know your thoughts and stay tuned for more incredible stories from history.